The Awakening. The observation deck of Station Penumbra offered the most spectacular view in human-controlled space, though few appreciated it anymore. Commander Ilara Voss stood alone, watching the unfamiliar stars through the reinforced viewport. 3,000 light-years from where Earth once orbited, humanity's last refuge hung in the darkness between galaxies, hidden from those who had destroyed their homeworld. "The final preparations are complete, Commander," said a voice behind her. Captain Marcus Chin approached, his steps echoing in the empty chamber. Like all humans born in the last millennium, he stood nearly 7 feet tall, his body adapted to the high-gravity environment of their artificial world. "After all this time," Ilara whispered, "it's difficult to believe we're finally ready." Marcus handed her a holographic report. "Project Phoenix has achieved full operational status. The fleet is armed with the quantum disruptors. All 30 colony ships report readiness for the Great Return." Ilara activated the small memory crystal she always wore around her neck. A 3-dimensional image of Earth, blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown landmasses, hovered above her palm. Not a replica or artist's rendering, but the final transmission from humanity's homeworld before the HFY Armada reduced it to asteroid fragments. "My ancestor was aboard the last evacuation vessel," she said. Commander Sophia Voss recorded the destruction so that no generation would forget. "We've carried this memory through 30 centuries of exile." Throughout Penumbra Station, similar scenes played out. 400 million humans, all that remained of a species that once numbered billions, prepared for the culmination of their ancestors' promise. 3,000 years of single-minded development, every scientific breakthrough, every technological innovation, every genetic adaptation, all focused on one goal: return and retribution. In the central command hub, Ilara addressed the assembled leadership of humanity's hidden colonies. "The promise of return has guided us since the fall of Earth. For 3,000 years, we've hidden, evolved, and prepared while the Sci-Fi believed us extinct. Today, we activate the final phase." She gestured to the massive holographic display showing the known galaxy. Thousands of stars illuminated, with hundreds highlighted in red, Sci-Fi strongholds and military installations. The quantum telescopes have mapped their empire completely. Their technology has stagnated. They believe themselves unchallenged. Our scouts report they've destroyed 17 other civilizations since Earth, following the same pattern. Any species approaching interstellar capability is deemed a threat and eliminated. Admiral Kenzo Nakamura, head of military operations, stepped forward. Nearly 8 feet tall with the dense musculature characteristic of humans raised in high gravity, he cut an imposing figure even among his peers. The Sci-Fi maintain their policy of preemptive extinction because it has never failed them. They eliminate potential rivals before they become threats. They believe humanity is just another extinct species in their catalog of destruction. Ilara nodded. "That misconception ends today. Phoenix Fleet will deploy through the artificial wormholes our engineers have created at strategic points throughout their territory. For the first time in their history, the Sci-Fi will face an enemy more technologically advanced than themselves." A murmur passed through the assembled leaders. 3,000 years of purpose was reaching its conclusion. "There's something else," Ilara continued. "Our deep reconnaissance has discovered evidence of resistance within the Sci-Fi Empire. Species they believe subjugated have maintained underground movements for centuries. Our intelligence division has made contact with several of these groups." The central doors opened, and 2 non-human figures entered, escorted by security personnel. One resembled a tall, slender humanoid with iridescent skin that shifted colors with movement. The other was more insectoid, with compound eyes and 4 arms. Ambassador Talon of the Lysithian Remnant. The first alien introduced himself with a fluid bow. "My people were the 4th civilization that Sci-Fi attacked 2,000 years ago. Those who escaped have hidden among asteroid belts and nebulae, much as you have." "Vex Morai of the Antiran Collective," said the insectoid being. "The Sci-Fi destroyed our homeworld 5 centuries ago, believing they had eliminated our species. We survived in underwater colonies on our system's outer moons. Ilara gestured to them. Ambassadors Talon and Vex Morai represent 17 species who have formed a shadow alliance against the Xiferi. Like us, they've been waiting for the opportunity to strike back. Unlike us, they haven't had 3 millennia to develop their technology beyond Xiferi capabilities. We bring vital intelligence, Talon said, his skin pulsing with blue patterns. The Xiferi Empire has grown complacent. Their patrol routes are predictable, their response protocols rigid. Their leadership has become decadent, believing their supremacy assured. Vex Morai stepped forward, mandibles clicking softly. My operatives have infiltrated their central command structure. We can provide access codes to their defense networks, communication systems, and military databases. Admiral Nakamura's eyes narrowed. And what do you seek in return? Justice, Talon replied simply. The same as you. Not merely vengeance, but the end of Xiferi dominance. Freedom for all surviving species they tried to exterminate. Ilara studied the intelligence reports from the alien ambassadors. The Xiferi, for all their military might, had created the conditions for their own downfall. Their policy of destruction and subjugation had united their victims. The operation begins in 3 days, Ilara announced. All colony ships will initiate emergency protocols. Phoenix Fleet will deploy to the designated coordinates. The primary target is the Xiferi Military Command at Ixalan Prime. Throughout the next 72 hours, humanity's hidden civilization transformed from a cloistered society into a war machine 3 millennia in the making. Families said goodbye to loved ones assigned to the fleet. The oldest citizens performed the memory rites, recounting the destruction of Earth for the youngest generation, ensuring that even if they failed, the promise of return would continue. In her private quarters, Ilara reviewed the historical records one final time. The Xiferi had destroyed Earth without warning or declaration of war. Humanity had barely managed to evacuate 50,000 survivors, scientists, engineers, and children, aboard hastily converted research vessels. Those refugees had fled beyond the galactic rim, establishing Station Penumbra in the darkness between galaxies. For generation after generation, humanity had maintained its focus. Children learned about Earth before their own colony. Every technological innovation was evaluated for its military potential. Every genetic modification was designed to create humans stronger and more adaptable than their ancestors. The promise of return shaped every aspect of their society. On the morning of deployment, Ilara stood on the bridge of the flagship Nemesis, a vessel that would have seemed like magic to the humans who fled Earth. 12 kilometers long, powered by artificial singularities, armed with weapons that could unmake matter at the quantum level, and protected by energy shields that could withstand supernova, it represented the pinnacle of human ingenuity focused through the lens of righteous purpose. Phoenix Fleet reports ready, Commander, Admiral Nakamura announced as he joined her on the command deck. Artificial wormholes are stabilized at all target coordinates. The Resistance Network has initiated preliminary disruptions to Xiferi communication systems. Ilara looked at the bridge crew, men and women whose ancestors had sworn an oath that seemed impossible to fulfill. For 3,000 years, that oath had passed from generation to generation. Today, they would keep the promise. Begin Operation Phoenix, she ordered. For Earth. The phrase echoed throughout the fleet as commanders relayed the activation codes. One by one, the massive warships disappeared into the artificial wormholes, emerging light years away near unsuspecting Xiferi military installations. The Nemesis emerged from its wormhole in orbit around Ixalan Prime, the heart of Xiferi military operations. For a moment, there was silence as the enemy's sensors registered the impossible, a vessel of unknown design, larger than any in their fleet, where no ship should be. Admiral Nakamura's voice was level as he gave the order that humanity had waited 3 millennia to deliver. Disable their defenses, jam their communications, launch boarding parties to their command center. We want prisoners, not casualties. Across Sci-Fi space, the same scene played out at hundreds of military bases and shipyards. The Phoenix fleet struck with overwhelming force and precision, neutralizing the enemy's ability to coordinate a response. Meanwhile, the resistance movements on subjugated worlds rose up, sabotaging infrastructure and seizing control of planetary systems. 3 hours after the initial attack, Ilara received the report she had been waiting for. Sci-Fi High Command secured. Minimal casualties. Defense network neutralized across 87% of their territory. For the first time in 3,000 years, a human stood face-to-face with the species that had destroyed Earth. Supreme Commander Xithkor of the Sci-Fi Empire had been captured in his private chambers, his guards disabled by technology they couldn't comprehend. Impossible, the alien hissed, his scaled skin shifting from its natural purple to a pale blue of distress. Humans were eradicated. Our historical archives confirmed total species elimination. Ilara removed the memory crystal from around her neck and activated it. The image of Earth's destruction played before the Sci-Fi commander's 4 eyes. "Not all of us," she said quietly. "Some escaped. We remembered. We prepared. We returned." The Reckoning. The Great Hall of Ixalan Prime had once been the center of Sci-Fi military dominance, where they had planned the extermination of countless civilizations. Now it served as the stage for an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from 19 species that Sci-Fi had tried to destroy, united at last from the shadows where they had survived. Supreme Commander Xithkor and the Sci-Fi High Council sat in restraints before the assembly, their normally imposing figures diminished by defeat. Behind them, the colossal viewscreen displayed a live feed of the Phoenix fleet in orbit around their homeworld. For 3,000 years, Ilara addressed the gathering. Humanity has existed in exile, preserving the memory of Earth and developing the means to prevent the Sci-Fi from destroying any more worlds. Today, we stand with all who have suffered under their doctrine of preemptive extinction. Ambassador Talon stepped forward, his skin rippling with patterns of green and gold. The Lysithian remnant acknowledges humanity's decisive role in ending Sci-Fi dominance. What you have accomplished in 3 days, the Resistance has struggled toward for centuries. The question before us, Admiral Nakamura said, is what comes next. Humanity did not undertake this mission merely for vengeance, but for justice. From his restraints, Xithkor spoke, his voice lacking its former authority. You speak of justice while threatening an entire civilization. Our homeworld lies at your mercy. Is this not the same extinction protocol you condemn us for? Ilara turned to the Sci-Fi commander. That is the fundamental difference between us. You destroyed Earth because you feared what humanity might become. You've eliminated entire species because your doctrine held that potential rivals must be prevented from emerging. She gestured to the gathered representatives. We could destroy your homeworld as you destroyed ours. Your technology cannot stand against what humanity has developed in 3 millennia of focused purpose. But extinction is your way, not ours. Ambassador Vex Morai of the Enteran Collective addressed the assembly, her compound eyes reflecting the light. The records we've seized from Sci-Fi archives confirm what many of us suspected. Their empire began 5,000 years ago, when they themselves faced extinction from a now-vanished predatory species. They survived by adopting the same brutal methodology. Strike first, eliminate completely, leave no possibility of retaliation. A murmur passed through the gathered representatives. The Sci-Fi had become the very thing they had once feared. Is this true? Ilara asked Xithkor. The Sci-Fi commander's scales shifted to a deep blue. The Devourers came from beyond the galactic rim. They consumed entire worlds. When we finally defeated them, we swore no species would ever threaten our existence again. Preemptive action became our security doctrine. Nakamura nodded grimly. Fear perpetuating itself across millennia. You destroyed Earth not because we had threatened you, but because your predictive model suggested we might develop the capability to do so within centuries. As you have now proven correct, Sithkor noted with a hint of defiance. Because you destroy our homeworld, Ilara countered. Had you approached humanity as potential allies rather than future threats, history would have unfolded very differently. For the next several days, representatives from the 19 surviving species worked to establish a new order. The Phoenix fleet maintained its position around the Sci-Fi homeworld, a reminder of humanity's power, but also of their restraint. The resistance movements, now operating openly, secured control of formerly subjugated worlds. In her temporary quarters within the captured Sci-Fi Command Center, Ilara reviewed reports from across the former empire. The transition was proceeding remarkably smoothly, evidence of how thoroughly the resistance networks had prepared for this moment. The Sci-Fi population is largely compliant, Marcus reported during their daily briefing. Most civilians appear to have been unaware of the full extent of their military's actions. Their education system portrayed the destruction of other civilizations as necessary defense against imminent threats. Ilara nodded. Classic indoctrination. The same tactics have been used throughout human history. It's why we've been careful to target only military installations and leadership, not civilian centers. The Coalition Council has reached a preliminary consensus on the structure of the new interstellar authority, Marcus continued. They're calling it the Galactic Concord. Each species will have equal representation, with a rotating leadership and mutual defense pact. And the Sci-Fi. That remains the most contentious issue. Some representatives want them excluded permanently. Others argue for a probationary period. On the 7th day after the capture of Ixalan Prime, the Coalition Council reconvened to finalize their decision regarding the Sci-Fi future. The setting was symbolic, a neutral vessel in orbit above where Earth had once been, now just an asteroid field orbiting a yellow star. We have reviewed the complete historical record. Ilara addressed both the Council and the Sci-Fi leadership. For 5,000 years, your empire has operated on a principle of preemptive extinction. 19 known civilizations have been destroyed or subjugated under this doctrine. Sithkor and his council remained silent, their scales muted in the dull gray of resignation. Humanity could impose the same judgment upon you, Ilara continued. Our quantum disruptors could reduce your homeworld to elementary particles. The Phoenix fleet could eliminate your species so thoroughly that in 3,000 years, you would be nothing but a historical footnote, exactly as you intended for us. She paused, looking at each of the Sci-Fi leaders. But that would only continue the cycle that began with the Devourers 5 millennia ago. Fear breeding destruction, breeding more fear. Admiral Nakamura activated a holographic display showing the proposed structure of the Galactic Concord. Instead, we offer an alternative. The Sci-Fi will surrender their military capabilities and submit to oversight by the Concord. Your scientists and engineers will redirect their efforts toward reparations, helping to rebuild the civilizations you damaged and restore environments you destroyed. In return, Ambassador Talon added, your civilian population will remain untouched. Your cultural heritage will be preserved. And after a probationary period of 100 years, the Sci-Fi may petition for full membership in the Concord. Sithkor looked genuinely confused. You would show mercy, after what we did to your homeworld. Not mercy, Ilara corrected. Justice. True justice looks forward as well as backward. It seeks to repair, not merely punish. To break cycles, not perpetuate them. In the observation deck of the Council vessel, Ilara later stood alone, looking out at the asteroid field that had once been Earth. Marcus joined her, carrying a small container. The terraforming assessment is complete, he said. It would take approximately 2 centuries, but the larger asteroids could be reassembled using gravitational technology. Not Earth as it was, but a memorial world at least. Ilara took the container from him and opened it. Inside was a small plant growing in soil collected from one of the asteroids, the first Earth life to grow in Earth material since the destruction. My ancestor Sophia believed humanity would one day return here, Ilara said quietly. But I don't think she imagined we would return as we have, not as refugees seeking to reclaim a lost home, but as architects of a new interstellar order. What happens now? Marcus asked. Ilara looked from the asteroid field to the stars beyond. For 3,000 years, humanity had existed in isolation, focused entirely on the promise of return. That promise had now been fulfilled. Now we move forward, she said. For 3 millennia, our purpose was defined by what we lost. Now we can define it by what we create. Throughout what had been Sci-Fi space, the news spread rapidly. The Phoenix fleet secured former military installations, while resistance leaders established provisional governments on liberated worlds. On planets where the Sci-Fi had maintained museums displaying artifacts from extinct civilizations, these grim trophies were returned to their rightful descendants. 1 year after the fall of the Sci-Fi Empire, representatives from all 20 species, including Sci-Fi civilians under their probationary status, gathered for the formal establishment of the Galactic Concord. The ceremony took place on a massive space station constructed in orbit around the asteroid field that had once been Earth. In the center of the Grand Assembly Chamber stood a memorial, a perfect holographic recreation of Earth as it had been, rotating slowly for all to see. Surrounding it were similar representations of the other destroyed homeworlds. Together, they served as both remembrance and warning. Ilara, now serving as humanity's first representative to the Concord, addressed the historic gathering. 3,000 years ago, my ancestor made a promise as she witnessed the destruction of our homeworld, that humanity would survive, would remember, and would return. Today, that promise is fulfilled not in vengeance, but in vision. She gestured to the assembled representatives from species that had hidden, resisted, and endured. What the Sci-Fi intended as extinction became instead transformation. They sought to eliminate potential rivals but created instead the architects of a more just galactic order. The memorial worlds remind us of what was lost, she continued, but this concord represents what has been gained, the understanding that security comes not from destroying potential threats, but from building potential alliances, not from fear, but from cooperation. In the darkened chamber, the representatives activated small lights, a tradition borrowed from ancient human ceremonies of remembrance. The combined illumination cast the memorial worlds in a gentle glow. For 3,000 years, humanity existed for a single purpose, Ilara concluded. Now we, and all represented here, exist for a greater one. To ensure that no species ever again faces extinction at the hands of another, and that the cycle of fear that began with the devourers 5 millennia ago ends here, with us. As the ceremony concluded, Ilara returned to the observation deck, where the asteroid field that had once been Earth filled the view. She removed the memory crystal from around her neck, the one that had passed from generation to generation since the fall, and placed it in a small receptacle built into the viewport. The crystal would remain there, the final witness to humanity's journey from near extinction to the architects of a new galactic era. The promise of return had been fulfilled. Now began the promise of tomorrow.